And we're live and back for our second to last Talkback with Filmmakers live stream. After this, we have one more, and then the rest will be live from the Roland Theater starting tomorrow. So this one is a really exciting talkback for me because the shorts that came in this year that the programming committee had to look at were so incredible, and it was really, really difficult to pare it down. And a lot of the ways that we do it, and I'll be introducing you to Katherine in a moment, is by looking at some of the features that we have and see how films can pair together and start a conversation from a perspective that maybe isn't as immediately noticeable or available. So this time, however, we just decided to take all the shorts and put them together so they can all start speaking to each other. Shorts are used in many different ways for filmmakers. Some filmmakers only make shorts. That's their interest. Some make shorts to develop a feature. Some make shorts to put their point of view out there and their artistic stamp out there. And some just make shorts just to get started. Today, you're going to meet about, eight filmmakers. I don't envy Katherine's job to keep this going. The thing about filmmakers, and we all know this in general in our own lives when we have to keep something short, especially in short films, is once you ask them about their film, it's all coming out because they had to take a bunch of stuff out of the actual film. So they got a lot to tell you. So this should be an extremely interesting hour. The subject matters range from robots in the kitchen to the Cabbage Patch Kids of the 80s and 90s, to climate change, to international stress, crossing borders, and losing oxygen. So there's so many other amazing subjects that are going to come up in this hour. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to someone who just came on board. And this is Katherine Axley. I don't know how we managed to do this, but we tempted Katherine away from wherever she thought she was going to be and brought her to State College, Pennsylvania, to teach here at Penn State in film production. And unfortunately for her, that meant I co-opted her and brought her in to the Center Film Festival and said, can you be on our programming team? And a lot of the filmmakers you see here today are here because of that. So without further ado, a filmmaker in her own right, a fantastic mentor and educator already, only half a semester in, and someone we consider very dear to the festival already, Katherine Axley.
Thanks so much, Pearl, for that introduction, and thank you all eight of you for being here today. It's such an honor to be with so many of our virtual shorts blocks filmmakers. Welcome to this digital space, and thank you again for sharing your work with us and with our festival goers. These 8 films are must-see, and most of the viewers of our live stream have likely already seen them, have had the privilege to see them. But if you haven't, please, after this, drop what you're doing and please tune in because they are beautiful, they are snappy, they are imaginative, and yet, as we'll likely get to talking about during our conversation, many of them engage with very serious topics and confront loss in rather surprising ways. So because there's so many of us, I'm going to briefly introduce our filmmakers, and so that our viewers can put faces to names in this Zoom interface. If you wouldn't mind just saying hi and telling us where you're zooming in from after I briefly introduce each of you, that would be great. So for Huntsville Station, we have director Chris Philippone, and Chris is a documentary filmmaker whose works explore physical labor, marginalized perspectives, and liminal spaces through aesthetically immersive approaches. His films have screened in incredible festivals and online outlets all over. So Chris, welcome. And I'm curious, where are you zooming in from today?
Hi, everyone, and thanks, Katherine. I'm coming at you live from Iowa City, Iowa. So
awesome, Iowa, great. And for Toto, we have Marco. We have Marco Baldonado. Marco is a Canadian filmmaker whose work focuses on visually striking and heartfelt storytelling. When he was 16, he won Best Music Video in a Sony contest. And with those earnings, he pursued his film degree at Ryerson University. So Marco, welcome. Where are you in Canada today?
Hi. Yeah, I am. I'm streaming from Toronto, Canada. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Great. Welcome. You're just north of us here. And for Gone in a Flash, we have Justin Zimmerman. Justin is a nationally recognized writer, director, and professor. His award-winning narrative and documentary work has appeared in more than 100 film festivals, including this film festival previously. And his work has also been broadcast on national public television. Justin, welcome. Where are you calling in from today?
I'm calling in from Portland, Oregon, and I think that this film festival is the 200th film festival that I've been in with my work. I love film festivals and I love this festival, so thank you again for having me.
Awesome. You will have to update your bio because that's a huge number. Great, welcome. For One Night Only, we have Lily Bourdain. Lily was born in New York City to a Hungarian mother and father, and she currently resides in New York, where she's developing her film and TV acting and directing careers. She recently acted in and helped produce the feature film Curtis. Lily, welcome. Are you in New York right now?
I'm in Stamford, Connecticut right now. We moved out of the city.
Awesome. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. And then for 10 Leaves Dilated, we have tactile filmmaker Kate Hinshaw. Kate works with both digital and film cameras and is interested in using the cinematic gaze to render visible the interiority of the feminine. She works with 16 millimeter and Super 8 millimeter film through bleaching, scratching, painting, and burning the emulsion in order to tell stories through color and texture, which we certainly see in the film we had the privilege of screening this week. Kate, welcome. Where are you calling from today?
Hey all, I'm calling from Wilmington, North Carolina.
Awesome. Welcome, Kate. And for Homeland Wetland, we have with us, and I do stutter sometimes, so that may occur. We have Danita Loretta Jackson with us, and Danita Loretta Jackson is one half of Electric Zoo Films, whose work includes narratives, documentaries, hybrids, a major exhibition, thousands of photographs, writing, photo essays, in addition to cutting edge work for local, national, and international clients. So welcome, Danita. Where are you zooming in from today?
I am zooming in from New Orleans, Louisiana.
Awesome. Thanks so much for being here. And I see we also have Cynthia. So Cynthia just joined us. We have DGA film director Cynthia Wade for Sproutland. And you've probably seen one of Cynthia's documentaries as she's directed so many, including Grit, Generation Startup, Living the Legacy, Growing Hope Against Hunger, Mondays at Racine, Freeheld, Born Sweet, Shelter Dogs, and Grist for the Mill. She's won over 55 film festival awards worldwide, but Sproutland is her first fiction film. And so we had the pleasure to see her first foray into fiction. So welcome, Cynthia. And where are you calling in from today?
I am zooming in from Los Angeles, California.
Okay, cool, great. We have we have two on the West Coast right now. And then finally we have Lost. And am I saying the title correctly? Lost. Yes. Okay.
Lost,
we have
yeah.
For Lost, we have director Jesco Thiel. Jesco works at the University of Hanover as part of the media production team. And Lost is his short film directorial debut. And also for Lost, we have producer and writer Cornelis Kater.
Yes, it's Kater. Mm-hmm.
And he's a writer, producer, and director. He never went to film school, but after doing a little bit of work in theater, radio, and podcasting, he began to produce and write short films, including the recent film Automatic Humans. So welcome, Jesco or Yesko. You'll have to correct me. And Cornelis.
Yeah.
Well, it's Jesko. Nice to be here, and I'm zooming in from Germany, Hanover.
Yeah. And hello from Göttingen in Germany. I'm zooming in from Göttingen, and I'm glad to be here. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks so much. So welcome everyone. I know we have limited time, and we have a lot of filmmakers here, but our viewers are eager to learn more about your films. So I want to begin with a simple question that you probably get quite frequently, but I was curious in watching each of your films. What was the initial spark for your film's concept or a central visual element of your film? And this could be, you could speak about a spark related to your thematic focus or broad subject matter, or a spark that's really much more specific, like the origin of the design for the robot Toto, how you found the bus stop near the penitentiary, or how on earth you tumbled into this discovery that there's a strong cabbage through line in the way birth has been sanitized and fictionalized for kids and for our society. So I guess maybe I'll go in kind of the same order. But then if anyone wants to kind of jump in, you're welcome to do so once someone is finished. But I can help. So Chris, can we start with you with Huntsville Station? Kind of what spark would you like to speak about?
Sure. So thinking back, for me, I was in grad school at the time, and I had been researching. I've been interested in the concept of freedom, but not necessarily the idea of freedom to do something. I feel like in American society, we talk a lot about, freedom to acquire things. And I was interested in this idea of freedom from, oppressive labor or other kinds of conditions and things like that. And I had naturally gravitated towards, maybe I could make a film or about reentry programs or something like that. I wasn't really sure, and had come across an article in the Texas Tribune about a Greyhound bus station that sits adjacent to Huntsville State Penitentiary in Huntsville, Texas. And this is the main kind of release point for all inmates across the state of Texas. And at the time, I know your professor, my professor and your former professor, Jamie Meltzer, I had told him about the idea, and turns out he had been at the station and filmed there before outside of the penitentiary for a film called True Conviction that he worked on for 5 years with formerly incarcerated folks who were falsely incarcerated for crimes they didn't commit. So when I told him about it, he was like, maybe we should go there and make this film, see what is possible, and decided to kind of collaborate from that point forward. And I will say, it wasn't a film you could really prepare for. We didn't know who was getting released, and normally the process would be, meeting your potential subjects, hanging out with them, building rapport and whatnot. And in this case, we just had to kind of show up and just make it happen. So it was kind of a risk in that sort of way, but it all sort of worked out. Yeah.
Awesome. Great. Thanks. And I'm curious for anyone else, if anyone else had a similar sort of spark where you kind of had the concept and the thematic area you wanted to explore, but then it was finding something specific through happenstance or through a news article that you paved your way and found your angle. Is there someone who experiences similar? And I see with Cynthia. So yeah, if you'd like to share, that would be great.
So I am primarily and have been primarily a documentary filmmaker, but I was increasingly directing my documentaries sort of proactively, putting the camera in a position and being less reactive. And so the style was changing. And I realized really what I wanted to do was start to move into fiction and try fiction. And death has been a theme in most of my documentaries. I don't know why. I keep trying to circumvent that and make something new. And then I realize, oh, wait, this is about death. And sometimes it's not a physical death. Sometimes it's the death of an idea or a relationship. And so I really have always been very interested in the idea of that you start your life on one path, and because of something either catastrophic or unexpected, you end up getting shunted very radically onto a different life path. And there's nothing you can do to sort of take it back. So I had been toying with the idea of making my first fiction foray about somebody who's been impacted by the sudden loss of their spouse, and was in boxing class. And was boxing with a partner that I'm not a great boxer, but I was in boxing class and was, with a partner who I was like, hi, my name is Cynthia. She said, hi, my name is Beth. It turned out she was a recent widow. So she plays herself in a fictionalized version of Sproutland. And she was married to a real man named Sproutman, who was this health food guru. And her life completely changed. And everybody was sort of clinging to this past of what, he was this sort of light of this small town in Western Massachusetts. And so she ended up, which was healing for her, playing a fictionalized version, a hyperbolic version of herself in this. And that was a way for me to begin to use real people, but actors, and kind of meld fantasy and fiction, non-fiction and narrative.
Awesome. Yeah, no, it was fascinating to see that, and I had to double check the credits at the end and do a Google search. So that was really interesting to see. We don't often see that. And in a similar vein, I believe that the director of Toto, I believe that Marco, I don't know if it's your actual grandmother who is in the film or if it's based on her story, but would you like to share with us a little bit about kind of what sparked the origin of Toto for you?
Sure, yeah. Oftentimes ideas come in a big wave to me, and I'm always like navigating them. Even to this day, I'm trying to find the single sentence that tells my film. But it's about a old lady teaching a robot how to make spaghetti, and it stars my grandmother. She's this Italian old lady, 94 years old, and yeah, that's my real grandmother. I felt casting her would be the best thing, the most authentic thing, rather than finding someone else. It's also the most budget option as well, because she'll do anything for me and I would do anything for her as well. So I think the story, I think a lot of people could enjoy the story because it's about this one person who has zero clue of what's going on in the modern world, so disconnected from technology, and yet she navigates it just fine and tries to, do the best for her family. I mean, it's not so one-sided in that way where I'm so anti-technology. It's just a nice little character profile on her. And one film that really inspired it was Mon Oncle by Jacques Tati. I could be butchering that name as well. But yeah, film ideas, I think they come in waves, and I'm still growing and I'm still navigating all this. And, I think it's an exciting thing to do.
Awesome. Great. Thanks so much for that. And I believe that that Kate also incorporates a family member within 10 Leaves Dilated. If I may be mistaken, but I believe that we might hear from your mother in 10 Leaves Dilated. But so making that connection to move to you, I'm curious which spark you would like to speak on in how you conceived of your film.
Yeah, maybe unlike Marco's grandmother, my mom was much more reluctant to speak on camera about her birth story. But yeah, the spark really started with kind of exploring my own familial folklore, which my parents used to say that when I was born, I was so small, they had to put me in Cabbage Patch Kids clothes. Which is kind of this euphemistic way of talking about my mother's high-risk pregnancy. And having been to Babyland General Hospital, where all Cabbage Patch Kids are born and they do this whole ritual, I had these kind of very strong memories of that space. And it was the through line of cabbage, and the connections with cabbage and childbirth were not immediately apparent, but it just, the entire time I was making it, it felt like something was there. Or I would meet someone who would say, my grandfather used to always say babies came from cabbages. Or you would kind of like hear this kind of whispering of this folklore that is the stork being kind of the more known one, but this was like the lesser known one that I felt was super interesting. And then was also just exploring there's so many weird connections with just like the properties of cabbage and what cabbage is used for, and reducing inflammation when a new mother is breastfeeding, and kind of all of these connections that were just super interesting and bizarre and things I'd never heard of before. So really what sparked that was just this curiosity of why are we talking about cabbages with childbirth? And yeah, I just kind of fell into the rabbit hole, and that's how 10 Leaves Dilated happened.
Awesome. Great. Thanks so much. Yeah, it was fascinating to see footage from really early films, like from the Cabbage Fairy. I had screened that in a class before for students. And then I was like, oh my gosh, there is this cabbage through line in how we speak about birth. So really, really interesting discoveries there. So I'm not going to stretch to try to make a connection between cabbage and birth and another film. So instead, I'm curious to ask Lily, what sparked the origin of the concept of one night only? How did this project begin?
I had a couple of friends passing through town, Hungarian cinematographer Eszter Csepeli, one of the only female cinematographers in Hungary, who we had been working on a film in Ohio, and she was passing through New York. And I had another friend from Canada, a Hungarian actor named Mihály Szabados, who was doing a one-man show in New York City. And we just wanted to work together. So really what sparked it was the people who, just a group of people who we had worked together on another film, all three of us, and we wanted to continue that we still felt like we had something in us to tell. And so the story really evolved in a very organic way. We wrote a story around Mihály's one-man play. So we had him wearing the 18th century costume going across the Brooklyn Bridge and through the New York subway. We filmed his show. We did it on a cell phone so we could go in and out of crazy locations like the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And then we brought Zoe Floros on board. We wanted to have a romantic thread in the story. And so it was very much based around just wanting to work with certain people and having the opportunity, an amazing DP in town and an amazing actor in town, and just really just the drive was just wanting to tell a story together.
Awesome. Great. Yeah. And I do imagine that you had quite a few experiences with him in his costume as you're going around the city, and it's also another great example of a fiction film, but that has all these documentary elements because you're filming in real places with real people.
So in real time and only one shots. You only have one chance to film a live show.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Certainly. Great. Thanks so much. And I'm curious for Danita, because it's my understanding that you are from Southern Louisiana, and so I'm curious for Homeland Wetland, if this is a project that has been brewing in your mind for quite some time, or if there was some event or spark that really set you on the path to create this film.
Well, I think the spark is that I'm a native of Southeast Louisiana, and I recognize that my homeland wetland will be gone within my lifetime. We've already lost, huge amounts of the state to subsidence, to oil, the oil industry and the petrochemical industries, the chemical industries, the plastics industries. But the thing that really sparked me and my husband, Patrick, to make this film is that one of the boaters in the film is actually a relative. He's related to me, my marriage, and he's a fourth generation crabber. And we were originally just going to make this little portrait of him and about how the big guys were coming and taking away his business, and how his children were not going to be able to continue on this life. But then once we started filming him, we realized that he actually didn't care about that. He was happy that they weren't going to continue on the life because it was a really hard life and he didn't want that for them. And then his boat burned down. So we had this choice of either to follow a story that I had been constructing in my head about how we were going to lose our homeland wetland and about who is responsible for that, and to some extent taking responsibility for that. And that's how we sort of got into the film that we have now, which is nothing like a portrait. It's basically a portrait of Southeast Louisiana and how it's become destroyed, essentially in the last 100 years by oil extraction and petrochemicals.
Yeah, no, and it's so interesting to watch your film in that it's a hybrid doc, experimental, but then it also has this sci-fi element that feels very much of the present, right? Is this a dystopia, or is this actually now? And that makes me think too of the film Loss, which certainly is dark and has a dystopian feel, but as you watch it, you also can imagine that this could happen in a few years. I mean, so I'm curious for the filmmakers of loss, what set you on this journey to make this film? Was it more around climate change, or was it this specific scenario where humanity is about to run out of oxygen in a matter of days?
Yeah. In fact, it's a movie about climate change, but we started the process to developing the concept of the movie as a kind of Black Mirror style movie in the near future. And we had the topic at the first, but I remember I woke up in the evening and I thought about what if the oxygen levels would be sinking and nobody would tell us about. And I felt a very strong emotion in my body. I reacted to a thing as if the oxygen levels would be sinking. And then we developed the story about this special feeling, and quickly realized it's about climate change after all. And it's a good story to give you the feeling how it has to be if we have to face our own consequences while we are alive, while we have to see what happens in a short time. It was compressed to 3 weeks, what could be 3 years or 30 years, we don't know. But we wanted to make a movie about a feeling. I think that was the spark which gave us the concept and led to the story.
Yeah, well, and after we got this idea of this climate change compromised in a short period of time and facing your own consequences, it was important to find some emotional impact, because what will this do with you when you face their own extinction? And there are so many ways that people will react to this. And very early on, the idea came on of, well, there are different stories to tell. So this is one story, but in this universe, there could be more stories, there could be other stories, there could be different people will react differently to this situation. And so it was very early on that we knew, okay, this is just one story we had to focus on and to find an emotional impact. And
certainly. And as Pearl mentioned, before we were live stream, that the experience watching it is quite visceral for the audience. And then for I'm curious for Justin to learn, how is it that you stumbled upon the subject of Gone in a Flash? Was it a personal connection you had? Had you heard of him before? I was actually familiar with many of the Flash animations you show in your film, yet of course I had never heard of him before.
Yeah, I work in comic books. I write quite a few comic books, and so was really aware of what was going on with Flash and the impending end of Flash. I'd also just finished. I'd worked on a extreme animal rescue documentary in Los Angeles for 3 years called Smart, and I had gone to film festivals for a year and then had sold that to distribution. And I really wanted to go a different way with my next project. And so trying to tell someone's complete story in the framework of the Flash animations, the same time and breadth and pace was really my goal. And I know a lot of those folks, the Charlie Unicorn folks and the Newgrounds folks and Salad Fingers, and talked to a bunch of them for background. But Jim was just perfect because he'd achieved this massive amount of success in terms of eyeballs and in terms of record of work, but nobody knew who he was and he wasn't connected to it at all. And so I think part of it too was just the fact that we're always trying to figure out what makes you a success when you're making independent films, you're making independent projects, or is it monetary gain? Is it number of people, or is it how you feel? So all that stuff kind of swirling around together just seemed like a perfect way to approach the subject. And he was just fascinating to work with. So I went down and did 3 independent shoots to Florida for that very, very short film. And it was just a lot of fun to go completely the other way with the end result of a project.
Yeah, no, and you it is quite striking to see how much you pack in a 3.5 minute short. Super inspiring. So for my next question, and some of you have already kind of touched a little bit on this idea, but your 8 films represent narrative, experimental, documentary, hybrid, art, video, all sorts of genres. But it's interesting in watching them again. Most recently, I was really struck with how so many of them do grapple with loss, but loss defined in different ways and experienced through a wide range of lenses. In Huntsville Station, we see men grapple with the loss of time and the loss of time from their lives in the first couple of hours they experience outside of the local penitentiary. In Toto, a robot who gets a reboot foreshadows an impending loss of tradition and memory. Jim's cultural influence and significance from Gone in a Flash, while unknown to most, disappears, overnight with the death of Flash itself. In One Night Only, we see Bela is free-spirited and passionate. And in his one-man journey through New York City, his encounter with a long-lost love seems to hint at a loneliness, perhaps, that emerges when he's not an actor. And 10 Leaves Dilated, fairy tales, and Cabbage Patch Kids reveal these stranger-than-fiction narratives that we create around birth, revealing how we continuously avoid frank and scientific dialogue around women's health. And I was struggling with what the loss is there, but it feels implied in some way that though these narratives kind of seem hilarious, the indirect impact on women and birthing people feels palpable. The death of a community health guru causes his widow to struggle with her personal loss when his larger-than-life influence continues to permeate the town and Sproutland. And in Homeland Wetland, we see an entire region and ecosystem that's been systematically devastated by man-made interventions for resources. And in so doing, the film allows us to envision a dark future that feels not so far off, reflecting a major loss to come, but one that we've also already created. And then of course, the film entitled Loss, has this impending loss when humanity is on the brink of extinction. So I'm curious. For each of you, how loss figured into your concepts. How did you come to engage with this theme, and perhaps how your own understanding of the ways in which you were engaging with ideas of loss changed during the process of making your films. And if there's anyone who wants to kind of start, and you can interpret loss in whatever way feels right to your film too. Yes. Danita, it would be great to start with you.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. It's interesting that you asked the question about loss, because I sort of had this idea of like, well, when we first went into it with my cousin, who's the crabber, his children are going to lose this this sort of way of life, and that's kind of how I went into it. But as I got more and more into the research and started looking at more and more of the archive, I realized that we were going to lose the whole region. So, and we're actually, our politicians down here and our knowledge workers, everybody's preparing us for that. Louisiana had the first American climate change refugees. We've moved an entire community from down south to up north. So I think what happened in the course of making the film is that I knew it was in the back of my head that we were going to lose it in my lifetime, that a lot of the places I had grown up in, as you know, were going to be gone. But I just kept putting it off and putting it off. But once I did the research and I realized that, like, hey, this is actually going to be gone in my lifetime, then I started getting really depressed about it. And I think you see that in the film. Like in the film, it's basically like, this is going to happen. All of our children are going to have to don their, cosplay masks and get the hell out of here. The kid at the end, the boy, the teenage boy at the end is actually my nephew. And the voice of the film is an older man looking back on what happened today, So it's the future looking back on today. And it really struck me that, yeah, we're going to lose it. We're going to lose it. And there's no way to get it back. There's no way to mitigate it. There's no way to stop it. We have to open up and let the water in. We have to open up and let the poison in our case, and figure out how to live with it. So that's what I realized when I made the film about loss.
Yeah, no, that's yeah, you definitely feel it from the film, and I imagine for you personally that whole process must have been and continues to be quite challenging to face that reality. Would anyone else like to jump in on yes, Lily?
So we encounter loss for the first time in One Night Only when Bela realizes he has nowhere to sleep. And so he's like, I don't really know if I have any friends really in this life who I can rely on. And so he's crossing the names off the list of where he can spend the night in New York City. But he's got such a positive attitude. And this actor in real life, he's essentially playing himself in many ways. And he's so positive, and he was literally in this situation, and in real life as well, for a heartbeat. And then Agota, this fictional character that we bring into the story to be his love interest, she talks about, who is also based on a real person who cleaned houses under the table for 15 years, is still an illegal immigrant in New York City. And we combined her with another character who lost her mother, lost her husband. And at one point, my editor was like, this is ridiculous. It's too sad. Like, nobody believes that there's a person with this much loss. But actually, it was written about a real person who lost her mother and her husband in 1 year. But in meeting each other for the first time in 25 years, they're able to give to each other some sort of hope, that there is this sort of love that lasts, because they picked up where they left off.
Yeah, no, and in seeing the close up of the female character's face after Bela leaves, and seeing her she has a slight smile, she's awake, that does seem to foreshadow this feeling of hope, and that she's actually not in despair. And I'm curious for any of the rest of you who are thinking about loss, if for any of your films that there is also this an element of hope that emerges within your film, or during your process as you yourself kind of were thinking through how loss figures into your characters or your participants' stories.
I mean, for me, it was really important and one of the things I really learned working with Beth, the main character, is how much joy, that the other side of grief is joy, and that there's a both and element, that both things exist. So it was very important for me to world build this very, very quirky town, where by the time you get towards the end of the film, there's a man, who, like, there's a long-legged man on stilts who just kind of walks by with a cup of coffee, and you completely just sort of believe it, because it's such a quirky world that's been built. And so she's living in this kind of sad and funny, absurd world. And that's because life can be sad and funny and absurd.
Yes. Yeah. No. And those shots that we see throughout, where there are the yoga folks and other people who are participating in exercise, kind of marching through the frame, was really well done. And also hearing the sound, the sound design as we saw them go through frame. I'm curious for Justin, you've already spoken a little bit about Jim and how his story kind of brings up ideas around what is success. but for him, and knowing that you kind of had 3 shoots with him, I can't help but feel so much sadness, and it seems like he has experienced, a profound loss. He even says, I missed out on getting married and having kids. So I'm curious for you in working with Jim and having these intimate conversations, what that must have been like for him to be so open with you about his own feelings of personal loss.
Well, I think part of it was that he appreciated the fact that someone was actually taking the time to hear his story and to give him a sense of authority and authorship that really he hadn't gained. But the questions that he has to confront are the questions that, again, I think everybody who's creating work of any kind has to confront. We have this idea that we're trying to get to some other level, or have someone come and reach down and say, you've made it, or here you go, here's all the money and the prestige you could ever hope to have, go get them. The world isn't like that. And especially in this next generation, because the YouTubers really supplanted the Flash folks, I mean, in a very specific way. And if you talk to a lot of the younger generations of creators, and I know a ton, like one of the big brass rings now is, I'm going to become a YouTuber and a zillion people are going to follow me and I'm never going to have to work again. So what if you have somebody who created a singular piece that more people than live in Canada watch, but it receives no money, no recognition, no time? Is that success or not? And so someone reconciling that, someone's so self-aware as Jim, was just absolutely fascinating to me. But, I'm not going to get into a documentary and leave what makes the person tick, off the table. It's after 20 years of this stuff, everybody understands the score. So he really entered the idea that we were going to be getting into who he was and why he was, as much as we were going to get into the work that he had produced, and his hopes and dreams and his losses is a big part of that.
No, certainly. And again, within the confines of 3.5 minutes, it's quite powerful to see. I'm curious for Marco, perhaps if you've had a chance to reflect on how loss, the theme of loss has changed during your process of making the film, or any other aspect of loss that you'd like to reflect on with Toto.
Ever since you asked that question, my brain has been going in a million directions, and I've been wrestling with myself to figure, what should I say? What should I say? I think ultimately, so in Toto, this old lady, Nonna Rosa, we'll call her, she befriends this robot, and she finds that this robot can, learn from her, download all her teachings and save it in its memory. And when the robot forgets everything, she just feels, wow, it's another entity that's forgotten about me. Whether it be, I know tradition is such a catch line kind of word, but like beyond that, her love will be forgotten eventually when she passes away. And that disappears as the generations, continue. And I guess that's what I wanted to explore, just like how technology can maintain someone's memory, but as easily lose it as well. And it's in our hands what to do with that tool.
No, certainly. And I'm curious for the filmmakers of loss. This question maybe feels too spot on for your film, but I might ask a more specific question, which is your choice to have a second character in your film who is actually pregnant. And it's interesting to see your main character, the man, really kind of struggling with the fact that humanity is about to disappear from Earth. Yet this woman who is pregnant seems to be hopeful in some ways. I'm curious if you could share with us kind of what that character and her situation, sort of how that connects to this impending loss, and what you hope that she communicates to the audience.
Okay, well, first of all, I have to say, while we were filming, or before actually, while we were writing, and we were thinking about, okay, how will the story develop? What will happen? And how will the people be affected? At the same time, my first child was born. So there was some kind of influence there, which gave me very strong emotional feeling, okay, what might happen? And we both started asking ourselves, in our situation, what would change? What would we do? And the first thing that came to my mind was, okay, how am I going to tell my kids you're going to die? So, and we felt that the man for himself, for what he's doing is fine, but we needed some gravitas. We needed something more, something emotional core. And we needed someone, as you said, with some kind of hope, some spark of hope. And especially this contrast was interesting for us. How will she develop? How will she, which, by the way, the actress actually was pregnant at the time we were filming. So it was very good to talk with her. How would you feel? What would you do? And gave her the response. And there was this hopefulness, even in the end. And this moment of caring about someone, her unborn child, which won't see the world as it is, because, as you know, the loss will be before that, the end will be before that. And we hope that this contrast might spark ideas. Okay, how will I interfere? How will I act in this situation?
It is about different scales of loss. The movie is dealing with a lot of different ways of loss. It's the loss of oxygen, it's the loss of the whole culture as mankind did, everything we built in thousands of years, the loss of the child potentially, and a lot more. So loss of time, of course, is a topic in the movie. So the main character is telling the big loss. He's the man who lost his possession, his job, his date, and the woman is telling the small, intimate loss because she's pregnant and will never get to know her own child. But she's hopeful, and both characters, after a lot of having distance and being apart, they find their way to be together. And I think that's a very important message for mankind. We have to face our problems together to change something, change something. And that's the story of the mother. We even had a situation where we thought the pregnancy may gone wrong, and we even had the feeling of the loss of the child because of the filming. But we later learned it wasn't the filming; it was just a bad medical state, and everything is fine. The child is fine, mother fine, and the father too. But we felt for a moment the loss of this specific child could potentially happen because of our own doing. So there's a lot of layers of loss in the movie.
Wow. Yes. No. Yeah. Many layers. And to piggyback off the idea of pregnancy and a woman. So I myself am 6 months pregnant, and I to connect to Kate's film, I have been struck by how little I know about birth and how much and how long it takes to kind of find actual real scientific data to kind of make some decisions going forward. So I'm curious for you, Kate, in reflecting on how your film kind of reveals this, or your film hints at this. At the fact that women's health in general, really seems to be understudied, and that these sorts of fairy tale narratives that we create around women's bodies can lead to a lack of understanding in our society. I'm curious to kind of hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think just bringing it around to loss, it's so much connected to this loss of the connection to your body, right? Modern OBGYNs, like the practices that we have, even dating back to the 1950s, they would put women in a twilight sleep and use wool and cotton to tie them to the bed so it wouldn't leave marks. So women would emerge from giving birth having, no idea what happened, but the body remembers, right? And we know this from any sort of studies of trauma and things like that, which is not to say all birth is traumatic, but it was interesting to me in exploring this subject, how varied so many people's experiences were with birth, and how much it was shrouded in secrecy, even still today, right? Because it's not, we think that we know, and we think that these kind of outdated techniques are not affecting us anymore, but they are. And speaking to doulas, I mean, the things that still happen with inducing women and scheduling deliveries, to me, is still quite appalling. I could probably go on for a while on that, but I think what was so interesting to me about the Cabbage Patch at Babyland General Hospital, this toy store in Cleveland, Georgia, was that you would stand there and this fake nurse would say things like, all right, Mother Cabbage is 10 leaves dilated. We might have to give her a C-section, which stands for cabbage section. And it's all of these people who have given birth laughing along with it. So in some ways, I felt like the Cabbage Patch ceremony was this kind of airing out of that in a very weird way, and kind of an absurd way, and maybe it is in our society that we can only talk about childbirth through absurdity. But that absurdity kind of provides a catharsis for a lot of people. And I tried to, with the film, end on a positive note, because I do meet more and more doulas who are working to improve outcomes, particularly in my home state of Georgia, which has terrible maternal mortality outcomes. I think people are becoming more open about it and talking about their birth experiences. So I do think there is hope in that way.
Yes. Yeah. No. Thanks. Thanks for that. And it was so fascinating to see these. These ceremonies at Cabbage Land or Cabbage Babyland or I'm forgetting what it's called. But it is interesting to reflect on catharsis through absurdity and how that might function. So I'm curious for Chris, because you noted when you first were thinking about a next project to make before embarking on Huntsville Station, that you were interested in the concept of freedom, but looking at freedom from, and I'm curious, in the course of being at this bus station and filming and producing your film, how your understanding of time and the loss of time for the individuals you filmed with, like how did that impact your own understanding of loss of time?
Oh, it's a really good question. I will say, in the process of making Huntsville Station, I think you come into making a documentary and you have, some set of assumptions of things that might happen. And, in the case of Huntsville Station, I thought there was going to be a little bit more joy. I thought there was going to be a little bit more excitement. And the thing that I found was that freedom itself is very complicated. There's a lot of weight to the idea of freedom, and in thinking about those expressions in the film where people do literally talk about time, and it's rare that happened in the case of film taking, making the film. I think, the first challenge was, will people even be receptive to being on screen? And we found, to our surprise, more often than not, people were very receptive, and part of that, I think, was that we were a very small part of their experience in that moment, and so we were able to be very immersed. But there were people who had, as you see in the film, because we didn't plan to do any interviews, but people who had pulled us aside and, almost used the opportunity with the camera there to actually reflect a little bit on the experience that they went through. And when you see the man in the film talk about 30 years and just the weight of that, It's hard to say how much it changed my perspective on the idea of time, other than to say that words themselves can't even tap into the absolute just seismic weight of time itself, and being in the system like that for 30 years. And I think we didn't know that was something that we were going to be able to capture. We didn't know if we were going to get those first moments of emotional release from people. And we were fortunate enough to be there long enough that did happen a couple times. But just to, it's, I don't know. I don't want to end on the idea of time is precious in some like sort of, cliche or something, but there is a level at which I think, that is so inexpressible, and that really it makes you reflect on the ways in which in our society we, can dehumanize people and within, say, by incarcerating them for the lengths of time that they would be in there for. And I don't even know if I've answered the question, but
No.
The enormity of time. I don't know. It was an experience that changed me, and being there in the presence of those first releases of emotion and feeling the weight of that just without the camera, not even thinking about the camera. It was just a real experience, I think. Really profound experience that I think I still, reflect on and think about a lot. So. Yeah.
Well, that certainly also does come through when you do have the camera there, and when we also have the privilege to experience it through your film. We unfortunately are also running out of time. So I'm going to have to kind of skip over my next question, but and end with something else. But I do just want to reflect just for a moment that all of your films touch on subject matter that is central concern to many of us. We've talked about climate change, women's healthcare, our digital ecosystem, technology, prison industrial complex, health foods, a busy and carefree New York City that seems like a distant past now in the pandemic. And so it's really interesting to think about our festival goers this week and what the experience of seeing your films and seeing and understanding the topics that they engage with is like, for the first week of November 2021 in this moment in time. I think our viewers have a lot to mull over. So I want to really thank you for sharing your films. Just if anyone in 10 to 15 seconds wants to share, give a plug on what they're working on next, that might be a way for us to end on an upbeat note.
I can go. So I'm in post-production on my newest documentary, and there's a trailer live now. The documentary is called Soldier, and the website is soldierdocumentary.com. So feel free to check it out and follow along.
Awesome.
I'm happy to go. So I recently, within the past year, finished editing my partner's short documentary called Since You Arrived, My Heart Stopped Belonging to Me. You can check that out on the New Yorker, and it's playing at festivals now as well. And I'm currently...
It's actually playing at our festival.
That's right. I forgot.
We just spoke to Aaron yesterday.
Cool. Right on.
That's cool. Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Awesome. Would anyone else like to share a plug on what they're working on? Yeah.
I'm working on the feature Toto.
Yes. Oh, so happy to hear that. Great.
Yeah, we're also working on the next movie, but will take some time because we are not in the business as a full-time job. We're working on a movie about how to do things right. So it's the answer to loss, how to do things right.
Awesome. Great. And I think Danita is about to unmute herself. There we go.
I was trying to unmute myself. Yeah. As well, working on the feature version of Homeland Wetland. We're trying to make it more narrative in nature than documentary, but it still will be experimental. And I also like the use of all of the footage that we used in the film. There's a lot of archive footage, but it's all public domain, so that we wouldn't have rights issues. So I'm hoping that we can do the same thing with the feature.
Awesome, great. Well, we will definitely stay tuned for that. We'll definitely want to see that. Would anyone else like to share? Lily, yes.
I'm working on turning a Hungarian novel about birth in communist Hungary into a TV series, working with a Hungarian writer and the writer of the novel and my DP from this film.
Oh, wow.
But I have a website, cliopictures.com, cliopictures.com. That's my husband and I named our production company after my daughter, whom I was pregnant with while filming One Night Only. So everything came from One Night Only. So there's a few projects that we are at different phases of development on right now.
Awesome, great. Well, yeah, we will definitely have to check out cliopictures.com. Would anyone else like to share?
I am co-directing a documentary about the nation's largest American flag factory in Wisconsin, which is staffed by immigrants and refugees from around the world. It's a film called The Flag Makers, and it's going to be for National Geographic. I'm directing 2 episodes of a doc series called Gutsy Women, which features Hillary and Chelsea Clinton. So I've been on the road with them. And in 2022, I'll be directing and show running a 4-part Netflix series. So nothing that's like Sproutland that's come from my heart. I'm sort of doing more sort of industry stuff for now, and eventually we'll go back to my own stuff.
Wow, but all sounds great, and it sounds like you have a busy year ahead. And Kate, would you like to share anything?
I've got like 10 million things in the works, but I think I'm just trying to get through the holidays and just trying to center my mental health. I'm a first semester professor as well. So I'm trying to work on relaxing, which is, I'm sure as many filmmakers can relate, is a hard job. So that's what's on my plate right now.
Yeah, I can definitely relate. Awesome. I think that was everyone. I want to thank you again so much for taking the time to share your work with us and to speak with us. It's really just an honor and to have you here. For our festival goers, our next and final virtual talkback is today in half an hour at 3:30 for the filmmaker of My So-Called Selfish Life. Tonight, we're having in-person screening at the Mishler Theater down in Altoona, so join us there. And starting tomorrow, we're at the Roland Theater in Phillipsburg for a full weekend of in-person screening. It's going to be a lot of fun, so please come and join us. I think that's it. Thank you again, everyone. I hope you all enjoy the rest of the week, and best of luck on your upcoming projects and on relaxing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.